Hey folks, JD here, and I've been asked a question. Well, there's multiple different ways to learn this, and this is probably something that took me quite a lot of time until I could actually figure out how I could make this work for me. Now, when I first started, I watched a load of videos, and I tried to get used to what the people were saying in the video, and it just wasn't happening for me. I couldn't do it. So what I did, I came up with I came up with a little strategy that I thought worked really well, and has actually held me in pretty good stead. Now, I'm not saying this is going to work for everybody, but it definitely works for me, and this is what I know, so therefore I can impart some of that knowledge onto you guys. So when you have a controller which belongs to a quadcopter that doesn't have altitude hold, you are automatically going to have this throttle button that automatically goes back down to the 0 position. A lot of altitude hold quadcopters, well, all altitude hold or GPS quadcopters you normally find will have their transmitter throttle, which will auto self-align back into the middle position here. Now, on non-altitude hold, they are like this. Now, what you've got to do is, with altitude hold, obviously you have a barometer that takes you up so high and then holds that at that particular pressure level, and then that's what gives you the stability, and that's what gives you the hold. With this, with non-altitude hold quadcopters, you don't get that, so you have to throttle up and throttle down and feather the throttle enough just to keep the quadcopter in line and just to keep it going ahead. Now, that in itself can be quite tricky, but what I like to do, I like to look at the horizon of where I'm flying, and I like to look at something straight ahead of me, say about your height, but in the distance, and focus on a fixed point. Now, what I find is interesting with that is, as you take the quadcopter up, you can then focus on that fixed point and keep the quadcopter at that particular level. So therefore you're not going to be going left and right, up and down, up and down. You're going to be focused on that point, and therefore you know your quadcopter has to stay in line with that particular point. And then you can start moving around left to right, forwards, backwards, very gentle motions, a lot like the motions in the other basics videos I've done for altitude hold. And as you're moving her side to side, left and right, up and down, you will notice that you're actually getting a lot better as you're focusing on that particular part of the horizon. Now, that's what I find just works for me. Now, part of something that I would look at is when I came to a park, I would focus on, say, a basketball ring, and I would know that if the quadcopter went up as high as the basketball ring, then I have to keep the ring in line with the quadcopter. That worked for me, and then I just went out every single week and I just progressed it, and I just made it, and I just got better over time. But it did take time, and I think I'd recorded at one time about 2.5 hours in the air before I was confident enough to fly the quadcopter away from me without there being obviously any altitude hold. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to just take her up, we're going to focus on a fixed point, and then we're going to take that quadcopter up to that point, and we're going to hold her. And then from there, we're going to just move this quadcopter side to side, left and right, a little bit, just so that we can get a feel for the quadcopter without altitude hold. Because as you move, the quadcopter may lower its altitude, in which case you have to then counter against that and just raise her up ever so slightly. So I tell you what, I'm going to stop waffling. Let's get on to the practical. So I'm at 50% throttle now, and now she's starting to lift. And then, see, this is where we're at for the second, 50%, and she's starting to wobble a little bit. She'll go up slightly and then she'll go back down. So now I'm up to about 60, and I'm going to just turn the drone around. But now by me turning the drone around, she's dropped a little bit in altitude. So now I'm just going to keep her a little bit higher just by feathering the throttle ever so much, ever so lightly. There we go. And now she's at about 60%, 65. You are going to get a bit of wobble. She is going to increase altitude and decrease. And then you then just have to apply the right amount of throttle just to allow her to stay up at that point of where you want her. But there we go, we can keep her at a line, and then you can start to take her out and fly her around at that particular altitude. And then once you're happy, see, you can just keep her up there. But I find it very important to keep an eye in the horizon and just fix onto a point, and then just to try and keep her at that point. Now obviously she's not going to stay up there all the time. She is going to throttle up and down as I'm moving the throttle, and I'm moving the throttle quite a lot. So as you can see, I'm throttling up and throttling down, and it's just a little bit, just in order to keep the quadcopter exactly where she needs to be. But every now and again, as you'll notice, I will lose throttle a little bit, and then I'll have to give her a little bit more throttle, and then she'll go up a little bit too high and I'll bring her back down. But the important thing is that you keep her as level as possible and don't let her just jump off high into the sky, and don't let her come down and touch the floor. So try and keep her up there as much as you possibly can. So I'm just fighting the little bit of breeze that we've got here today as well. So as you can see, if I do kind of like this here, you can see exactly what my thumb positions are, just to fight against this little bit of a breeze that we've got, but just to keep her up as well, so that she's not hitting the ground and she's not flying off into the distance. But then you can just play around with it and keep her feathered in the air, and always ensure that you have enough throttle response so that if you do go down too low, you can then throttle up and take her back up and fly her around. See? And then she gets too high, back down, back into your fixed point, hold her at an angle, and then you can fly her around to your heart's content. And round about here, I'm quite satisfied with her staying there. And to be honest, I think that's quite an acceptable level, because if anything happens, you know, it's not going to fly off. You're really low to the ground. You know, there's no obstruction nearby. But at the same time, if you keep that little point and just try and fly her around here, obviously she's going to wave. But at the same time, if you keep on practicing that, then eventually you're going to get it. There we are, folks. Thanks ever so much for watching and listening. I've been JD. You've been fantastic as always. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Hello and welcome to all the new subscribers. I hope you're enjoying the channel. So until next time, my friends. Happy flying.